Welcome to Wake Up Newport. We've got a great speaker this morning, but before we get to her, let's hear from our illustrious leaders.
Welcome everybody, I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and this is our August edition of Wake Up Newport. We got a great speaker this morning. She was going to come back in June, but she had to, at the last minute, fly back to Washington, but she said, I'll be back in 2 months, and she was good to her word. Congratulations, Alberto, on the promotion. I did write a recommendation letter for him to the vice chancellor or somebody, I don't know, a couple people. So I'm sure that's what put it over the top for the new promotion. So you owe me a lunch. No, just kidding. Alberto's a great asset to the chamber, and we're proud of him and his accomplishments. Before we get started, we have a few dignitaries here with us this morning, so I'll just quickly mention them. First off, City Councilwoman Robin Grant, also known as my sister. Assistant City Manager Tara Finnegan is with us this morning, I think. She might have ran out for just a second. We got a couple former mayors with us. Keith Curry. Keith. Interesting factoid, Keith's son-in-law works for Katie, right? Yeah, even Keith will admit it. I know, it's progress, right? Talking about, yeah, well, we won't go there. Tom Edwards, former Mayor Tom Edwards. Tom. And I couldn't believe it. He walked in this morning without his walker or cane or anything under his own power. Tony Petros, recovering from a pretty drastic injury, bicycling injury. So we're good to see you on the mend, Tony. John Langford, Planning Commissioner. Also chair of the board of the Friends of the Newport Beach Animal Shelter, who just transferred to this. Is it official now? Transferred? Oh, you're killing me. Animals are in? Okay, we have brand new animal shelter. They totally fundraised it. Actually, Councilwoman Grant was a big part of that as well. And totally raised like $3.5 million for a brand new animal shelter, which they're about to deed to the city free and clear. So congratulations on that. Howard Herzog, Civil Service Board. Howard, where are you? Wave. Back there, okay. Dorothy Larson's on the board of the Library Foundation. Dorothy, are you like the vice chair or something now, or you vice chair? Okay, great. And then our board chair, Andy Smith, is here this morning. Thank you, Andy. I enlisted Andy at the last minute. I realized I left the bottles of water on my living room floor this morning, and so I had to send them to Ralph's, and he came through for us. So thank you, Andy. And then last but not least, I'm going to invite up Sabrina Holmstrom. Where's Sabrina with Wells Fargo Bank? Come on. Did you want to say a couple words? Great. Yeah, they were our sponsor this morning, and she's got a few promotional items back there. Please, I'm sure she doesn't want to take them back to the bank with her, so grab a water bottle, grab some sticky notes, whatever it is. And certainly at the end, if you want a donut or coffee or a bagel to go, grab one of those. I'm going to turn it back over to Alberto. He's going to introduce our guests.
And I'll be quick because you don't want to hear me. Congresswoman... Congresswoman Katie Porter represents the 47th Congressional District in Orange County. In Washington, Congresswoman Porter has remained committed to putting families first and speaking truth to power. As a member of the House Oversight Committee, she asks tough questions of bank CEOs and administration officials to hold them accountable for the American people. She's a proud member of the House Natural Resource Committee, where she works tirelessly to protect our beaches and public lands, call out big oil taking advantage of taxpayers, and keep families safe from wildfires and other natural disasters. Member of the bicameral Joint Economic Committee, she's a leading voice on keeping our economy strong, stable, and globally competitive by cracking down on corporate greed, boosting competition, and investing in smart, family-friendly policies. As a single working mom, Congresswoman Porter knows firsthand about the challenges that families face. She's introduced bipartisan legislation that would more than double the amount of families can set aside pre-tax to help pay for preschool, summer day camp, before and after school programs, and child or adult daycare. Lifelong consumer advocate, she taught bankruptcy law at the University of California, Irvine School of Law, zot. And a graduate of Harvard and Yale Law School. Help me welcome Congresswoman Katie Porter.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I am very, very excited to join you and appreciate everyone understanding about June. I actually come back and forth absolutely every single week because I'm raising 3 lightly supervised children here in Irvine. They are now 12, 15, and 17. And so was back and forth, but we had to stay for votes because the voting schedule really, things kind of fell apart toward the June, July debt ceiling negotiation and fallout of that. And so it was a chaotic schedule. So I'm glad to be back with you today. Thank you for having me to Wake Up Newport, and thank you for bringing me back to the Newport Beach Public Library, where one of my books is 3 days overdue. I want you to know that I already dropped it off this morning at the book drop. So it was in my car. I know, so I had to come back. So it was great. I come here probably once a week. I'm a huge library user, and I think it really speaks to the character of Newport that you've chosen to make your library available to everybody who lives in California. And so it's a wonderful place, one of my favorite places to be in Orange County. So I'm glad to be here with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Congress to focus on economic growth as a driver, to try to create a strong and stable, globally competitive economy. I represent an area that runs, I'll describe the district because it has changed recently. So following the census, the districts were redrawn. This new district, the 47th Congressional District, we got a new number. It runs from Seal Beach down to Laguna Beach. So Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, all of the city of Costa Mesa and all of the city of Irvine. And I have maybe 100 people, 200 people in Laguna Hills and Laguna Woods that were just the map drawers not understanding Orange County very well. So I got a handful of those folks. And so it's a district that has an incredible diversity and strength of businesses, both small businesses, tourism, real estate, financial firms, a mix of both old and new, I think, technology and business. And so it's been really wonderful to get to know and get a chance to tour and see some of the businesses in the community. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in Congress and what more I think we need to be doing, because I think the work is not even close to being done in terms of the challenges that we're facing. So we've made great progress, I think, in strengthening federal support for manufacturing here in the United States, including high-tech manufacturing. President Biden has made this a big priority, and so one of the best votes I've gotten to take was the passage of the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act. And so what this does, it's already at work, it's already creating jobs here in the United States to help us manufacture circuit and semiconductors in particular. Taiwan is the major manufacturer of semiconductors, so this has both domestic kind of competitiveness factors, but also a big national security implication. Were we to have escalations with China and Taiwan, this could be a real factor. So the great news is that we are opening factories to bring that manufacturing back here. This will give us more, it'll help prevent supply chain hiccups. It'll give us more control over cost. For me, the bad news is I don't see these jobs coming to California. I see them going in Ohio and in Pennsylvania and in South Carolina. So I'm very focused on how do we get here in California, because we developed this technology. We invented so much of the semiconductor industry here, and we used to have a huge semiconductor factory right there on Jamboree, if we remember. And so I think it's really an issue for the delegation, to the California delegation, Republican and Democrat, to be more vocal and push harder to recognize that California is not just, as some people think in Washington, it's not just an economy about Hollywood and Apple. It is an economy about manufacturing, and has always been a global leader in manufacturing. Because we have the ports here, because we're so connected to Asia, we need to have some of those jobs here, if not in Orange County proper, in the surrounding areas. So I think there's more to be done on that, but I think President Biden has gotten this one right. We need the best high-paying jobs for our future to be right here in the United States. We cannot continue to outsource the most critical pieces of technology to our foreign competitors. So I think it's great that we've seen bipartisan cooperation on this. I think the next step is to think about how can California get better at fighting for our share. The second thing we've made a lot of strides about, where I think California is really well positioned, it's a little bit better news in my opinion for where we already are, is around green energy, clean energy. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a big bill, it does a lot of things, but the main thing it does is make it cheaper for both businesses and families to invest in green energy to run their businesses, to run their homes. So there are tax credits to produce electric batteries, electric vehicles, electric storage. We have a lot of this work here in Orange County. Behind the sort of stucco that we drive by, we often don't know what's there. And I will tell you, one of the things that's there, particularly in Newport and in Irvine, partly driven by UCI and the climate of research that we have here, is a lot of amazing green energy companies. So everything from a company in Lake Forest that I got to tour that is working on nuclear fusion, which would be an alternative to nuclear fission. Nuclear fusion has no byproduct. It doesn't present any of the health risks and challenges of San Onofre, which we know well here in Orange County, to a company I toured in Huntington Beach that is able to break down to capture carbon in the atmosphere using something they found in ocean water. And they take the carbon and it turns into plastic, and then they can make straws out of it. So it's not just taking carbon out of the atmosphere, it's also creating not just carbon-free plastic, carbon-negative plastic, which is incredible. And you've driven by all of these things, but the benefit of my job is I get to go in and I get to see what they're doing. And so I feel really good about the climate work that we're doing. The biggest frustration for me, I'll be honest with you, is I don't have air conditioning. And I live in Irvine. A lot of people in Newport, Irvine don't. The climate is getting warmer, the temperature range is getting bigger, the number of days that it might get hot is getting higher, and President Biden in the Inflation Reduction Act promised tax credits and point-of-sale rebates to help people buy heat pumps. Heat pumps are really badly named. Heat pumps keep you cool, not just hot, and I really want one. I don't want to put in an air conditioning system of yesteryear. I want to put in the greenest, most efficient, cost-efficient, as a single mom, energy system I can get. I voted for the Inflation Reduction Act about exactly a year ago, and those tax credits and tax rebates are not yet rolled out to consumers. So I really got up into it with John Podesta, the president's energy advisor, about this. I was particularly hot that day, and I really, really let him have it, because when we talk about we're doing these great things in Washington, it can't just be the buzzwords of the Inflation Reduction Act. It has to be people being able to go into local stores, to talk to appliance manufacturers, to call their local repair person, small businesses, to install those things. So they are saying it will be next spring, to which I'm saying it looks like a hot summer. And so I've been getting a lot of chance to visit all of our recreation facilities in the last few days as it's been so warm here. But we want to make sure people actually get the tax credit. So we will have a series of workshops and educational things. We're actually going to try to video me going through the process of shopping for a heat pump and figuring out which one to get, to try to show people that these are available. But we're being held up by the lack of the administration kind of getting all the way to done. And I think that's a big theme of what I try to do in Washington. I'm really frustrated, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, when I hear politicians promise something, they have a press conference. It's happening. And then how many months does it take to actually get done? And some of that is inherent in any project, right? I'm sure you announced your animal shelter and it took you a long time to get it built. But we do our job in Washington as representatives. We are the closest elected body to the people. So we are elected every 2 years, so it is really our job to push the president, Republican or Democrat, to get things done more quickly. I want to talk quickly about two challenges where I think the federal government, I think those two things, manufacturing and green energy, we really made some progress. There's more to be done, but I think those are big, big successes. I want to talk about two areas where I think we have not gotten it done for California families. The first one is childcare. My daughter went to University of California, Irvine, on-site childcare for her last year of preschool. It cost more for her to go than it would have been for her to be an undergraduate at the University of California. Now, while I'm happy about what that says about our in-state tuition, Anybody who's ever been a parent in this room knows that you don't get 18 years to save up for preschool. You get about 9 months. So it is a huge, huge problem that childcare costs are so high. We're not going to be able to bring them down on the backs of the people who do childcare work, because they themselves are struggling to live in our communities. We need to treat childcare as what it is, an investment in our workforce. Childcare is not about kids. It's not about whether you had kids or you had one too many kids. It's not about any of that. Childcare is about our economy. It is about keeping the talented people that we are graduating from our university and that you are promoting and training in your businesses in and connected to the workforce if that's what they want to do, not driven out by childcare. It is about training the next generation of workers. Children who need literacy skills, who need to level the playing field and those gaps. And so we need to start thinking about childcare the way we think about education generally in Orange County, which this is an incredible place that values public education. And we need to think about the early child care piece as part of this. And so there's a lot more to be done. This was part of President Biden's proposal. It did not make it into the final bill, and I think it's time to go back and do more on that. What I propose on this, what I think is the best approach, particularly for higher cost of living areas like Orange County, is not to use an income cutoff, because we often fall just out of that, even as people really need help, but instead to say no family should pay more than 7% of its income on childcare. 7% is a big number, but that gives people some certainty and it makes it slide. So if you're making $200,000, but you have 4 kids and they're all in preschool or pre-K because you're working as a doctor, let's say at Hogue, you might be able to get a little help, or you know that if that next kid comes along, it won't bump you out of being able to get help. The second big issue is housing, and I know you guys have done so much on this, but let me start with the big picture frame. Federal officials, when they get asked about housing, to this day, many of them say, well, that's kind of a state issue. And then you hear your state people say, well, that's kind of like a county issue. And then you hear your county people say, well, that's kind of a local issue. Here's how I think about it. Being a leader at the highest level of government means owning the biggest challenges that our community faces, and that is the cost of housing. It is an issue not just in Orange County, not just in coastal California, it is an issue across the country, and our federal government needs to get in the game. The last time we made a huge investment in private market housing was the GI Bill. The GI Bill. And think about how many of us know a parent or great uncle or maybe ourselves who were able to get housing because of that GI Bill. So we need the federal government to step up. It is important that every city and every community does their part. I know you recently have an approved project that I'm excited about coming forward, and I think in the Kroll Center, is that right? But I think that we need more at the federal level to help. So that means funding Section 8 vouchers. It means being innovative about how we close the gap between the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which for a lot of your younger employees is just not in reach. You can give them as many raises as you want. It's not going to close the gap between being able to put money down on a house that costs $1 million. That's just not something we can get to raise by raise, cycle by cycle. And then the 1-year rental, which creates a lot of instability in our neighborhoods. And we have people moving in and out, they have inflation pressures. So there are some in-between models that we might want to think about, longer term leases, different kinds of housing, shared appreciation models that we need to work on. So the federal government needs to be as innovative in housing and brave in kind of thinking about the solutions and brainstorming, working with our industry partners in the private sector to try to come up with bringing down the cost of housing. The last thing I want to say is just ask that, to make you aware and ask for your help in letting people know that our office is here to help them with federal agencies. We have returned, I think it's almost $18 million in my 5 years in office, 4.5 years in office, to people who have had trouble with federal agencies. Many of you are veterans. You have frustrations with veterans, VA care, IRS issues. Ever present, forgot to renew my passport. Please, for the love of God, people, renew your passport before you go on your trip. We get these calls every single day. They are heartbreaking. We're able to get almost everybody, but please renew your passports. Go home, take a look. renew your passport. And so we're happy to help you with immigration issues, all of these things. I have a really terrific team. And so spread the word, because very often people don't know that we're here. And particularly the people who most need us don't always know that we're here. And so we're working to do more office hours out in the community with our constituent services team, and so that people know that we're able to help them with everything from immigration to IRS issues, Social Security issues, all of those things. So you can always call our office for that. I think I'm going to stop there and take some questions. It's been my pleasure to get a chance to tell you a little bit of what's on my mind, and then I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Yes. So let me back up and bring everybody into the conversation, if you don't mind, because I think most people don't know where you're talking about. So she's asking me about a piece of state legislation that I will not be voting on. It's called the Caste Discrimination Act, and what it would do is the intent of the law, and I understand you're concerned about how it will be implemented. The intent of the law is to ban discrimination based on caste within the Hindu religion. And that, as she says, sounds like a very good thing. There are concerns, though, about how it may be enforced and how it may play out. And so I have been in conversation with some of the state folks about it. I think you should ask for a meeting with Katie Petrie-Norris and with Dave Min and with others. I don't anticipate this going anywhere at the federal level in the near future, but I do think it's an important issue to educate people on. I have to take the next question, but I do think it's an important issue. If you're not aware of this issue, it's one to think about. I think this is one where the intent is good and the implementation is maybe a challenge. It is very controversial, in part because it would be the first law of its kind in the United States, the first law of its kind to ban caste discrimination. Okay. You wrote your card. I mean, this guy wrote it down, so he gets to go next. Plus, he sat in the front row, so.
Why did you vote against the debt?
Yeah, great. So question is why, and I'll repeat the question for everything so everybody can hear me. The question is, why did I vote against the debt ceiling, raising the debt ceiling? So the short answer is, and I will give you a little bit longer answer, but the short answer is, any vote that is pitting our climate and our economy and our planet and our investments in green energy in California against our economic growth is a bad trade-off bill. And that's really what this bill did. So it pitted our two values, protecting our environment, dealing with things like coastal restoration and green energy investment. That's non-negotiable for California. If we don't do that, we will not continue to thrive. We are not going to weather the climate change and the changes that come with it well in coastal California. We need to be making these investments, and we need to be raising the debt ceiling. And so what it did is it pitted us against that. So one of the things it did is it would allow project sponsors, people who want to build pipelines, which is fine, to write their own environmental review. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That's the whole point of the environmental review. There are problems with how these environmental reviews play out at the local level. But at the federal level, the environmental review is really important, and I don't think we ought to be giving giveaways to big oil to let them write their own environmental reviews. There was also a provision in there to strip judicial review. In other words, you guys know when you get a decision you don't like, you have from an administrative agency, you have the ability to go to court and to challenge that. It would have eliminated that right with regard to enforcing certain environmental laws. So I think we should be protecting our branches of government, all three of them, not circumventing them and short-circuiting them. Now, let me be clear. I did a whole big thing on the Joint Economic Committee in the days leading up to the debt ceiling vote, helping to explain to people what the debt ceiling was and why we should not just raise it, but get rid of it. We should get rid of it. That is the much better choice than every couple years bargaining against ourselves on things like environmental protection, which is so important to California. I mean, we're putting in all this effort in California. We're making changes. We're having to retrofit things. We're having to buy more clean energy vehicles. We're doing it all. And then at the federal level, President Biden said in that debt deal in the negotiation, never mind, just keep polluting. That puts California at a huge disadvantage because we keep moving forward and the rest of the country was being let off the hook. For those of you who don't know, the debt ceiling works like this. Imagine going into the store at Christmas, and you say to yourself, okay, this is it. I know I love my grandchildren, but I'm only going to spend $500. That's my debt ceiling for Christmas, $500. You get in the store, you put, oh, that's so cute. She loves ducks, let me get her that. Oh, but she asked specifically for, I know that she wants this Taylor Swift hoodie. You start putting things in your bag, you walk up, and you just don't look at the register when it rings it up. You just hand over your card. A month later, you've given out the presents, everybody loved it. The bill comes, $800. But your debt ceiling was $500. Can you call up your credit card company and say, I'm not gonna pay that other $300, see, because I had a debt ceiling. Did you know that about me? I had a debt ceiling. It was $500, so I'm just not gonna pay that other $300. What would happen to you? You would be in default. Your credit card company would sue you. Your credit score would go down. That's what the debt ceiling is. The debt ceiling is about paying for our past expenses. Should we have maybe exercised more discretion in making those decisions? Probably. Should we, going forward, be more thoughtful about what we're spending money on and scrutinize every single hard-earned taxpayer dollar? Absolutely. But the debt ceiling is a fake constraint. It basically says, we're gonna make Congress go back and take a vote in order to authorize the Treasury to pay the bills for stuff we already bought. That's not real fiscal discipline. We need real fiscal discipline. We need to be debating the budget vigorously, but this debt ceiling vote is not it, and I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen right now. 2 years from now, year and a half from now in January, we're gonna hit the debt ceiling again. And then we're gonna have another one of these negotiations that's gonna hold up government and create huge fights between Republicans and Democrats, not about what we spend going forward, which is worth fighting about, I think, but about what we already spent in the past. So it is frankly nothing but that whole debate, which sounds so real. Like, it sounds like it's about debt and spending. It's not. It's just an opportunity for certain people to take a victory lap, saying that they're so frugal, and other people to basically say, we should spend, it makes Democrats look like they want to spend, it makes Republicans look like they don't. But how did we get to the debt ceiling? We spent a lot during President Trump's presidency, in part because of the pandemic. It's not even about President Trump, it's about what happened to our country during the pandemic. So I think the whole thing is a farce. I think we should not have it. And I wanted to send a very strong message to the president. Stop doing this. The right vote to take is one to eliminate the debt ceiling so that we can get to having a really tough negotiation on forward-going spending, because that's how we bring down the amount of debt. Raising or lowering the debt ceiling doesn't change the amount of the deficit in this country. It's just all Washington games. And it allows people to think that we're doing things that we are not doing, that we need to be doing. So I hope that helps. I know it was a longer explanation, but I think a lot of Americans don't know what it is, and then we get into these very debates. All right, Dennis, because he'll just keep waving his hand if I don't call on him.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Porter, for being here this morning. Dennis Bress, member of Newport community. So we've been working with your office and gave some relief here, forward-thinking, and it would meet our climate change goals.
Yep. So I think as an Orange County representative, noise at John Wayne Airport is like the third rail of politics. It's like, please, nobody ask a question about the airport. So thank you, Dennis. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. So let me say a little bit about the airport. Here's the challenge, okay? We simply do not have an airport of the size and capacity to support the level of community that we are. That really is the problem. So I want to back up one from the noise, which is very real. I don't need to tell a lot of you that. It goes over my house too. But we actually have a bigger problem, which is that we're the sixth most populous county in the United States. How many of you knew that? Sixth most populous county in the United States. And our airport doesn't get it done. for our community. It doesn't get it done for our businesses. It doesn't get it done for our tourism. It does not get it done for our friends and family who want to come visit us. It is a huge, huge problem. And so how do we think about that? I do think that it doesn't make a lot of sense to have voluntary noise and then just say to the airlines who don't do it, oh well. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think if we think these noise abatement procedures work and they make a difference on the ground, and that's what I hear from the feedback, then we ought to make them across the board with some very narrow day-by-day exceptions for wind conditions or other kinds of safety conditions like that. So that I think is important. I will say the FAA across the board is an agency in need of a lot of revision. I think we've seen this with what's happened with Southwest and the flight delays. What we all know is happening on every airline we take, which is smaller seats, less comfort, less attention to safety, more employee turnover. This is an industry that needs to shape up. What we just passed out of the House, the FAA reauthorization bill, I voted no on that too, actually. And part of the voting no on that is there are a lot of problems with it. And everyone admits there are a lot of problems with it. And we were told, don't worry, the Senate will fix it. That has not been my experience in Congress. I think that there maybe was a time when the Senate fixed things, but the last 5 years, the Senate has been and continues to be much more captured by special interests and much more kind of beholden to any individual senator's pet needs. I mean, a lot of what happened in the Inflation Reduction Act was just about Joe Manchin. It wasn't about what our country needs to do to be competitive globally on green energy. It was about getting Joe Manchin reelected, which is not my job. My job is to fight for Californians and for California's economy and people. So I had an amendment. This I think is really telling about the FAA and why we're so stuck in trying to work with you. We had an amendment in the bill that would have required the head of the FAA to come testify before the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee once every 2 years. Didn't pass. Republicans didn't even make it in order, so it didn't even get a floor vote, right? So believe it or not, one of the biggest problems we have with the FAA is even when Congress, this just blows my mind, even when Congress tells them to do something, they don't do it. So it's something like half of the stuff we told them to go do in the last FAA reauthorization, they haven't done. So one example, and we had a bill on this too, an amendment on this too, was we told them, before you shrink passenger legroom or seat width, do a revised study on the safety implications of letting airlines make those changes. Because when they practice those airline evacuations, the planes are like half empty, which is not what happens when we fly, right? And so they practice with young people and people who are mobile, and it does not look like the actual population always riding the plane. They haven't done it. They haven't done the study we told them to do last time. So I absolutely think we need to turn up heat on the FAA. With regard to moving people to other airports, I just don't know, Dennis. Like I'm a really straight shooter, if you guys don't know this about me yet. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I've flown 85 flights this year. 85.
From LAX on a direct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But some from John, I would say 30 from John Wayne and 55 probably from LAX, and a couple into San Diego to boot, by the way, because I couldn't get where I needed to go. And so it's a huge problem. I mean, we have to be honest. The answer can't just be less at John Wayne. I think it has to be more passengers, fewer planes, because I think that is the best match between meeting the need that we have to get people moving in and out of our community and not having so much noise. So the reality is, there's an unlimited number of private planes. Did you guys know that? Unlimited. One of our 2 runways is exclusively for private planes, right? And so, we're using a lot of our airspace and a lot of our air traffic bandwidth and a lot of our resources for a private plane airport when we're the size of a city that needs more public, more commercial flights. So I don't have the exact answer for you, Dennis, other than I'm glad you raised it. I want people to think about it, and I want to hear more about what to do. But I do think it is a statewide issue in that we are part of this regional transportation network. The fact that our next closest airports are all 60, 80, 100, 120, depending on the time of day I land, away is a huge, huge problem. And I don't have all the answers yet. All right, yeah.
So you, if she were to retire early, a black woman should take that.
Oh, let me be clear. Governor Newsom made that promise on TV, on national television. He was asked what would happen if Senator Feinstein were to retire, and Governor Newsom said that he would appoint a black woman. I sadly don't get to appoint myself to the U.S. Senate. I have to run and win and campaign and earn the hearts and minds of people across the state in California. So that was Governor Newsom's decision and Governor Newsom's statement.
And now we know that Barbara Lee's of color within politics.
Yeah, yeah. So look, we all want to have a representative government. That actually is the heart of democracy, is that you take your experiences and you go and you bring them to Washington. But I think that what we need is to think about how do we get there, and that is really about making sure that we're leveling the playing field for everyone to have opportunity to run and then to run again for higher office. Congresswoman Lee has been in Congress about 25 years, so she's a terrific representative. She's my colleague and my friend, and I'm glad that she's stepping up and running for the Senate race. But this is a decision that's going to be made by Californians. So I have two terrific colleagues, Adam and Barbara, in the Senate race, and that is a good thing. It is a good thing for Californians to be able to choose their next senator, and it is a good thing that the choices that they have are diverse and reflect a different number of years in Congress. I've been there 4.5 years. My competitors have been there 20 or 25. It is a good thing that some of us represent really evenly Democrat, Republican, independent, purple areas like this. Barbara Lee represents the most Democratic district, 435 out of 435. We serve on different committees. We have different life experiences. That is all part of what makes the magic of democracy. So I'm very glad to have Barbara in the race. I'm very glad to have Adam in the race. And I also intend to do what I've always done, which is win. All right, let me go. I haven't done the back of the room, and I have to help these people in the back. Yeah. One more, okay. Yes, Susan.
I'm getting excited, Katie Porter, that I should have retired soon.
Yay!
I've been waiting for this. But now I have to eliminate Social Security. What's going on here?
Yep. So as Social Security is the single greatest anti-poverty program in our country's history. And I think we're at a time now where it's really important to say that and to remind people, many of whom, most working people today do not remember life before Social Security. So they do not remember what it was like for seniors and how hard difficult it was. The truth is we don't need to protect Social Security. We need to expand Social Security, and we need to expand Medicare, particularly to cover dental, vision, and hearing, and I actually have a bill that would provide tax relief for the SALT, state and local tax deduction. At the same time, it would fully fund Medicare, dental, and vision. So that is a win-win for us here in Orange County. We do have a rapidly aging population in Orange County. I'm sure it's something that you all have talked about. If you haven't, I encourage you to take a hard look at the fact that not only are we all each getting older individually, our community is actually getting older. And one of the reasons for that is the cost of housing and bringing young people into our community. We have the jobs. We don't necessarily have the housing here to accommodate people. So look, Republicans have, I'll be honest with you, certain Republicans have played really fast and loose with this, campaigning on the one hand about reducing Social Security and on the other hand saying that they would never do that. So I think it's incumbent on Democrats to actually campaign, and I did this in this last race, really campaign on helping people understand Social Security adds $0 to the national debt. Did you guys know that? $0 to the national debt. So when we hear during that debate about the debt ceiling, which first off is about stuff we already did, but even if we're going to talk about stuff we need to spend on, mixing Social Security into that mix is a complete fiction. It's just lying to the American people. Now, spending on Medi-Cal, That is a forward-looking expense. We can debate whether whether that money is a good investment or a bad investment. Social Security is self-funded, as you well know. So there's a bill in Congress, the Social Security Act, 2100 Act, that would raise very, very slowly, and this is important to me, that it be very slow, the amount of income that you pay subject to Social Security. So right now, if you make $10 million, you pay the same amount into Social Security as somebody who makes $150,000. That doesn't make a ton of sense. And so we should slowly scrap that cap. It's not a one-to-one exchange, but we ought to slowly raise that. That would address the funding issues for Social Security going forward. But it's almost a self-fulfilling political game that they're playing, which is that they tell voters that Social Security won't be there for them, and then people don't want to support Social Security because they think it won't be there for them. So I think it's really, really important that we double down on helping people understand that Social Security is relied on by millions and millions and millions of Californians, including lots of people here in Orange County. People are not able to reconfigure their entire working lives because politicians decide to play some games in Washington as they approach retirement age. This is about keeping our promises to the workers of this country. And our country should be a country that keeps its promises. I think that's really, really important. I know Cody's going to make me go. I just want to introduce everyone. Cody, this is Cody, my district director. Tony, can you raise your hand? Tony is my senior field rep. He comes to these meetings pretty regularly. Anthony Falcone, who's not here, comes pretty regularly. And this is Cody. Stand up, Cody. Cody is my district director. And fun fact about Cody, he was an intern in my office. And he worked his way all the way up to district director, which I'm very, very proud about. So thank you very much, Wake Up Newport. This is my first visit. It will not be my last. If you had a question and you didn't get it answered and you would like us to answer, if you put your name and email on it and give it to Tony, we will email you back. And I'll come back next time and get to answer more questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. I know you have a busy schedule, so we appreciate your time with us today. Just quickly, before we file out, a few things that we have coming up if you want to join us again for one of our upcoming events. If you're a member or an invited guest, you can join us for our Western-themed barbecue on our patio tomorrow from 4:30 to 6:30 at our office. Our women's group, Inspire Women in Business, will be meeting on August 9th for lunch at Morton's. And all this stuff is on our website. Go to newportbeach.com. You don't have to write anything down. Our next networking luncheon is going to be at Fleming's on August 16th. Our Government Affairs Committee, if you didn't get enough government today, come back on August 17th. It's in the morning, 8 to 9:15. Not sure who our speaker is going to be yet, but we always have a good one. Our next chamber mixer is going to be at the Lot Theater over in Fashion Island on the 24th. Next Wake Up Newport meeting is September 7th. Police chief was supposed to come, but he had to change, so I'll have somebody, don't worry, somebody good. But put that down. And if you're a young professional, our Navigate Young Professionals are going to have an event up at Pelican Hill, our little putting tournament. So that's going to be a lot of fun on, again, September 12th. If you're not a member of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, you should be. Grab a donut or a bagel on the way out or some of the Wells Fargo stuff. Thank you, Sabrina, again, for sponsoring, and we'll see you next time.